This is MacVoices TV. Hi, I'm Chuck Joyner, and this is MacVoices TV. Folks, it seems like recently all we've been doing is talking to Take Control authors, but it's hard not to because they produce such great books about such great subjects that we not only are talking about the books, we end up talking about the subjects in some depth, hoping to add a little value to both. This time we're going to continue that trend. We have Michael E. Cohen. He is the author of the brand new Take Control of TextExpander. Michael, welcome to MacVoices TV for the very first time. It's great to have you.
It's great to be here. I've been on MacVoices, but not on TV. I hope I don't scare the audience. Okay.
If they've been watching me, you can't scare them. Trust me. Trust me. I was really excited to see that you were doing a Take Control book about one of my favorite programs, TextExpander from Smile Software. And we'll probably do a disclaimer up front, or I will anyway, that I don't pretend to be unbiased about this software. I love it. I use it every single day, multiple times a day, probably more than multiple times a day. So I'm going to be interested to see if you can teach me something I didn't know about TextExpander, or whether you're just targeting the rank beginner TextExpander user.
I'm targeting anyone who uses the program, from the beginner to the sophisticated user.
Okay.
And I went through all of those stages in the process of writing the book myself. I started as a rank beginner.
Which surprised me that you would agree to write a book about a program that you really hadn't used. That's, at least to my mind, that's kind of a unique approach. Or am I just not used to the author way of thinking?
Well, there's two ways you can go into writing a book about a piece of software. One is, if you're already an expert, you want to share your expertise. And that's great, especially with very, very complex software. But there's also something to be said from starting off from a very beginner's point of view, because then you have no preconceptions about the software itself. You're learning it as other users might learn it. You're asking yourself the same questions that others coming to the program for the first time will also be asking. So you get a real sense of what some of the really important points of the software are. What are some of the pain points? What are some of the virtues? Why you would want to do the things that the program offers.
Okay, that's good. So you're really approaching it from the ground up and taking us with you on the journey.
In a sense, yeah. And then that's, in a way, largely how the book is organized, at least the first parts of it.
Now, we're probably being a little negligent here. I'm going to ask you to explain what TextExpander is and what it does in a very simplified fashion, just so those few folks that don't know about it or don't have any idea have some idea what we're talking about.
TextExpander is what's known as a text expansion utility. It lives in the background on your Mac, watching as you type. And if you type certain key phrases called abbreviations in TextExpander jargon, it will intercept those and replace those abbreviations with something else called a snippet. And a snippet can be a word, 2 words, 10 words, 50 words, 500 words, 1,000 words. In fact, in the book I state, and I think it is true, that you could have a snippet that contained the entire text of Moby Dick if you wanted it. There's no limit on the size of a snippet.
Michael, why would I want a snippet of Moby Dick?
I have no idea, although I was working with somebody who was very deeply into Moby Dick at one point not too many months ago.
Okay.
But the fact is, it comes in very handy for things like form letters. It comes in very handy for things like comments you might make on student papers, for requests for more information, for if you're working tech support at some company, some of the canned answers you may want to send back to people can all be TextExpander snippets.
Now, so far, and of course the name TextExpander I think is just slightly misleading, because we tend to think in terms of just big blocks of text, but TextExpander goes way beyond that, because you can do it. First of all, you can do a lot of things with text, including CSS, HTML. I'll let you fill in some other blanks, but it handles other than just text formats.
Absolutely. You can also have snippets that contain graphics and styled text. So if you have a logo, a letterhead, something like that, very easily that can become a snippet. So no matter what word processing program you're using, you can produce your logo and letterhead right within that program by typing just a couple of characters. It can do other things too. It knows about your Mac system and system date, so you can very easily write a snippet that includes the current date and the current time. It can also do date and time math. So you can write snippets that will say, today's the 15th, add 7 days to that and use that date. For example, if you're writing a reminder letter to people that, a week from now we're going to have our house party, that date is, and if your TextExpander snippet is set up to have 7 days ahead, you just type the snippet abbreviation for it and it calculates the date automatically.
Okay, Michael, so far we have the text of Moby Dick and date expansion, date awareness and date math. I'm sure there are people out there that are saying, neither one of those really apply to me. And I think that they're wrong. Would you agree?
I think that they are too. You don't really realize the utility of it until you begin to use it. It just saves an enormous amount of time. But not just for expanding, simple pieces of text. It's a little bit more versatile than that. There's one snippet type known as a fill-in. And that's a snippet that contains both text and fill-in-the-blank spaces that you can fill in once the snippet is expanded. Again, I know somebody who's a doctor who has to send to the other physicians he works with in the hospital requests regularly for reports on procedures they've performed, because he has to get this information to put together all the billing and the other information that the hospital needs in order to work. And so he's got a bunch of snippets that contain the core of what he's going to ask, but it also has fill-ins for the doctor's name, the name of procedure, fills in the date, maybe fills in the OR that the doctor was using, and he can fill those things in once he generates that snippet on the fly. So it's sort of like modified boilerplate, where it's also like a boilerplate with a database behind it.
Now again, and I'm joking with you about the Moby Dick thing, but you mentioned two snippets you have that are pretty small and pretty simple things that you type repeatedly, and you created snippets to make your life easier there.
For example, once I began writing the book, it became a real pain to actually type TextExpander, because, it's one of those words that's intercapped, capital T, small e, small x, small t, capital E, small x, small p, and so on. That's a lot of typing, and you got to hit the shift keys just so, and you often mistype it. Now I just type the letters TTX, and TextExpander appears in whatever document I'm working in. It works in even in file naming dialogues. If you're saving a file, you can expand a snippet right there. So TextExpander, I never have to type that anymore. I never have to type Take Control anymore, because I type TCO and it becomes capital T-A-K-E, capital C-O-N-T-R-O-L.
Now we've gone the whole way from the text of Moby Dick down to two simple words, Take Control, or one simple word, TextExpander. That's just how versatile the program is. And I think it points to the way that you need to think about this program, about the way that you could use it or will use it, or after you've gotten familiar with it, can use it as you get comfortable with remembering that, I have an abbreviation for that. What was that abbreviation? Bang. Pretty soon you almost create your own little shorthand library and can knock a lot of stuff out very quickly.
Also, if you're afraid that you'll forget where your abbreviations are, TextExpander has great capabilities of searching your abbreviations and your snippets. So if you kind of sort of remember the abbreviation might have had these letters in it, or the snippet that I'm looking for contained this phrase, you can search on it very quickly, and TextExpander will tell you, it's one of these, choose one, and then you type a control key and a number, command key and a number, and that snippet is inserted automatically for you. So you don't even have to strain your brain remembering every abbreviation. TextExpander remembers them for you. By the way, you said one thing, you typed just a few characters. In some cases, you may end up typing more than the actual result, but that's okay. For example, there are a number of characters in the character set that your Mac can produce, including smiley faces, special symbols like the command key, copyright symbols, all sorts of stuff that you have to remember where they're hidden on the keyboard, and in fact, some of them aren't even hidden on the keyboard because they're very rare Unicode characters that exist way high up in the character set, but there's no key presses associated with it. But you can create snippets that will generate those characters. For example, if you need up arrows, down, left, and right arrows, I have snippets for them now. I have snippets for little pointing finger characters that happen to be actual characters in the Unicode character set, but you'll never find them on your keyboard. Little hearts, little stars, the little delete key symbol that you often see in Mac documentation. That's one of the symbols that I have. So there's a lot of them. I'm sitting here looking at my keyboard in case I'm not looking at the screen because I'm looking at, oh yeah, they're not here.
Yeah,
see? They're not there.
Yeah, and again, these are the kind of things that you need to really think beyond the simple idea of taking a block of text and abbreviating it down. I know that one of the things I use TextExpander for is to create the web pages for these shows and certain boilerplate things, my Twitter address, links to the homepage and all that. A few characters and bang, it's in. And it's HTML because, of course, HTML is just text.
And also, TextExpander has the capability for you to specify where the insertion point appears once a snippet expands. So, for example, if you have a snippet to create the HTML for creating an anchor tag where a URL would go, it can generate both the beginning and ending of that tag and then stick the insertion point right in the middle where you'll actually be typing the URL. So you don't have to go arrowing back to get to where you need to be or moving your mouse or anything like that, because you can create the snippet that moves the insertion point for you.
One thing I want to make sure we touch on, because I know you talk about it in the book to a significant degree, and it may be a place that people haven't gone before. You can work with TextExpander and AppleScripts to create some very powerful workflows.
That's right. You can create snippets that contain AppleScripts that will be executed when you type the abbreviation. One very simple thing I do is when I often have to type email that refers to a URL of a web page I've just been looking at. So I have a little snippet called get URL, not surprisingly. And what this does, if I'm sitting in Apple Mail and I type the phrase get URL, it runs an AppleScript that says, go to Safari, find the frontmost window, find the URL in that window, and stick it here. And that just becomes a real convenience for me. There's also a bunch of pre-canned snippets that Smile makes available, predefined groups. One of those predefined groups is a whole bunch of HTML and CSS code. Another one of them is a whole bunch of foreign words that you would type in English but that would have accent marks. So if you type them without the accent marks, TextExpander will automatically insert the accent marks for you. And one of my very favorites is the Tidbits autocorrect dictionary, which Adam and someone else years and years ago began to create of the common typos that people make when submitting stuff to Tidbits. And so this is a dictionary of all of those mistypings with the correct typing as the actual replacement text. So if you type SOULD instead of SHOULD because your finger missed the HK typing should, this fixes it. There's many others. I frequently will be typing along and see my text corrected as I'm moving without even thinking about it because the Tidbits autocorrect dictionary is just slugging in the right things because my fingers have been typing the wrong things. The wrong things correctly.
Typing in the wrong things.
Well, the wrong things that match the wrong way they're spelled in the Tidbits dictionary so it can find the right spelling.
Okay, glad you clarified that. That sounded a little strange. You know, Michael, though, you talk about typing along and watching things get corrected, and that brings up a point that we haven't touched on. TextExpander is fast. It's not like you have to sit there, type an abbreviation, and wait. It happens so that for a writer like you who has a pretty darn good typing speed, it doesn't interrupt you. It just keeps right on going.
It's just living in the background silently, or maybe not silently, because you can assign a sound to any expansion. But it lives in the background and just watches you type and fixes it for you or expands stuff for you. Once you have it set up, you don't think about it. It's just there.
And how long do you think it takes to set up your first snippet?
Well, let's see. I guess if you've never, ever used the program before, maybe 5 minutes.
Yeah, if that.
Yeah.
If that.
And that's basically because you'll be looking down at your list of instructions and then looking back at the program, so there'll be a little bit of time there. But yeah, it's very, very quick. All you have to do is type the thing you want to be replaced, the thing you want it to replace it with, and then you're pretty much done.
And I think the funny thing is, because I distinctly remember creating my first snippet and thinking, okay, did I get it right? And then going to another program and typing the abbreviation, and bang, there it was. Like, wow, it really works.
Yeah.
And then you do the next one, and that one works. And after that, you're hooked. You're kind of stuck.
Oh, yeah. Oh, by the way, in addition to AppleScripts, I should mention that TextExpander also does Unix command line scripts. So if that's your scripting language of preference, you can write snippets that do Unix commands as well.
Okay, that could make my brain hurt, but
I'm sure there are some Unix-using people out there who will be going, oh, cool.
Yeah. I love your impression there, Michael. Okay, so I am going to ask you to talk just a little bit more about the AppleScript, because is this something then that I can go out and find pre-made AppleScripts? Because those are a dime a dozen on the internet. There's so many great ones out there, even a lot available from Apple. I can take those and bring those right into TextExpander and use them?
Pretty much. What you want to do, though, is have an AppleScript that produces a textual result, because the whole point of TextExpander ultimately is to stick expanded text where something you typed would go. Now, you could have an AppleScript that can open up a bunch of different applications and, change a picture from one format to another and stuff like that. But ordinarily, you want to have the AppleScript do some processing that comes up with a textual result that gets stuck in your text. One thing, for example, that the AppleScript snippets can do is, I've seen, and in fact, there's an example of it in the TextExpander documentation that comes with the program. You can set up a snippet with 4 or 5 different signatures you might use and want to vary, because you don't want to always say the same thing twice. And so this little AppleScript will generate a random number, use that random number to pick the current signature that it then plugs in. So you can have something that looks like it was written by a real person instead of by a piece of software, because it's not the same every single time.
But there's no reason I couldn't have a TextExpander snippet that called an AppleScript that launched another AppleScript that did something completely unrelated to text.
Absolutely. There's nothing to stop that. No, not at all. You could have you could have a little TextExpander snippet that would rearrange all the icons on your desktop, file the last 5 drafts of the novel that you were working on in a certain folder, and then call up and order you lunch.
And the funny
if you had an application that could call you up and order lunch that was AppleScriptable.
And I know you're being a little flip, but really, I'm sitting here thinking, that wouldn't be that difficult to write, except for the lunch part.
Well, that's where the random number comes in. Today is going to be sandwich. Tomorrow will be soup.
Okay, you've really thought about this, haven't you? The TextExpander. Oh, I'm going to get it for this. I'm sorry for the pun. The TextExpander universe is expanding onto the iPod and the iPad and the iPhone. Do you cover TextExpander Touch for those devices?
Yes, I do. There is a difference between the way TextExpander works on the Mac and the way it works on the iOS devices. On the Mac, TextExpander can live in the background and basically use built-in hooks into the operating system to watch whatever's being typed, so it can make the substitutions for you. On the iOS devices, though, every app is in its own little sandbox. They don't really interact with one another well, and that's by design. It means less things will crash, less programs will interfere with other programs, less chance of malware, things that will ruin your stuff. But the consequence is it's really hard to have something like TextExpander live in the background. So what programmers have to do is design their apps intentionally to work with TextExpander. Smile makes available the programming frameworks known as APIs for doing that for anybody writing an iPod, Touch, iPad, or iPhone program. And they can incorporate TextExpander capabilities within their apps very easily. And in fact, there are over 100 apps that now use TextExpander, that support TextExpander. If you have TextExpander Touch on your iDevice, and you have one of these apps, it will automatically use TextExpander.
Folks, think about what Michael just said. 100 apps that have incorporated TextExpander capabilities. That says a lot because this is the developer community adopting basically someone else's work, someone else's service. That ought to tell you something. And if you're not a developer, so what? It means that they are able to get stuff done, and therefore they want that capability in their programs.
Mm-hmm. That's what is it that programmers do? They do a lot of typing. That's why it's so hard to write movies about programmers, because the action involves somebody banging at a keyboard. Not a great action sequence. But because programmers live with their keyboards, they live through their keyboards, anything that makes typing easier, that makes it more reliable, that makes it more flexible, that allows you to do more with fewer keystrokes, they're going to love. And so a program like TextExpander tends to be loved by people in the development community.
Yeah, and by the users too. Because I've often said one of the disadvantages of TextExpander is that once you've started to use it, if you sit down at someone else's Mac to try to get something done and they don't have TextExpander with your snippets, you just feel like there's really something missing, and it's gone, and you feel kind of empty.
Yeah, it's certainly, you've been wearing lightweight shoes, and suddenly somebody strapped on these iron moccasins and you can barely walk. That's kind of how it feels to use a machine that doesn't have TextExpander on it after you've used it for a while. That actually raises an interesting point. You talked about not having your snippets with you. One of the things you can actually use TextExpander Touch for is to move your snippets from one Mac to another. Because when you have TextExpander Touch, you can sync it with the TextExpander on your Mac and copy your snippet groups to TextExpander Touch. And then if you go somewhere else where you work that also has TextExpander installed, you can move the snippets from TextExpander Touch to that Mac and use them there, as long as TextExpander is already installed. So that's a very quick way of, just taking your snippets with you on the fly.
Yeah, and it's something I think that you're gonna want to do. Your comment about what did you say? Iron shoes, iron.
Yeah, iron moccasins, I think I said.
Yeah, it's true, and I'm listening to us talk about this program, and neither one of us is pretending to be objective. We both love it. We're both fans of the software. It's a very strange thing, and it happens with a few programs where people become a fan of it. They don't have to use it. They want to use it. They look forward to using it, and they get a little angry if somebody tries to take it from them.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty much the experience I had with TextExpander. I actually point out in the introduction to the book that I tend to run a very vanilla Mac. There's back in the day, and the day goes back quite a ways, I used to put on all sorts of special extensions and expansions on my Mac, to really, really, really customize it. But that was years ago. Lately, I make a good part of my living by helping others. And in order to help others, you have to have some idea of the experience that they're living with. So I tend not to have all sorts of special add-ons and utilities, because I want to have an experience on my Mac as close to what other people would have. So my original idea when I was asked to write this book was, well, I'll install TextExpander, dive into it deeply, learn all of its secrets, figure out how to explain it to somebody who's never seen it before, and then when I'm done with the book, I'll, take it off my machine and get back to my plain vanilla Mac. Well, TextExpander is not going anywhere. I'm hooked. I will live with it. I will not take it off my Mac, even though I know everybody else I know who isn't using it won't have the same experience I do. Well, sorry about that, but I'm not giving it up. I can't.
I think we all have that core set of programs or utilities or whatever that you just, if anything happens to your Mac, or if you get a new Mac, that's the first thing you put on, because you just don't know how to act without it. You type something and something doesn't happen, and it's like, wow, what happened to TextExpander?
Exactly. You can also, by the way, sync your snippets with Dropbox or MobileMe if you want to move them around that way. In case you're moving to a new Mac, you don't have to leave your snippets behind or recreate them. They can be transported in a number of different ways, and they also can be automatically backed up and restored. That's built into the program too.
Yeah, and that's a huge function because that means that for a number of us, I'm not sure everyone yet, but a lot of us have 2 Macs or more. And with that capability, it means that I create a new snippet on my desktop. It's available on my laptop in a few seconds, and
That's
it's available on my work Mac in a few seconds, and really anywhere else I want to sync it to. So not only am I backed up, but I'm also synced. I've also got. I don't have those iron shoes to look forward to, Michael.
That's okay. You get rust on your soles of your feet. It's really ugly.
Thanks for that picture there. One last thing I want to make sure we point out is that, folks, you can go and you can buy Michael's book, but you can go and check out TextExpander for yourself for free on the Smile Software website. They have a 30-day fully functional demo. It is available in the Mac App Store, but you don't get the 30-day demo. And I would tell you definitely go and buy it straight up. But if you're not sure, grab the 30-day demo, grab a copy of Michael's book, sit there and learn about it. And I don't think it's going to take you 30 days to know that you want to add this to your arsenal.
I completely agree. Very few people I've shown this thing to have stopped and said, I'll never make use of it. Anybody who just lives with the keyboard will very quickly go, oh man, is that convenient. How could I have lived without this?
Yeah, and it's funny because we've gone the gamut here. We've talked about in your uses something as simple as expanding the word TextExpander to ripping out Moby Dick, and you don't want to have people believe it's underpowered. You don't want to have them believe it's overpowered or complex. It really floats to the level that you want to use it or where you need it. Yeah, it's that whole thing. I said, your first one, and you find out it works, then you do your second one, and that works, and all of a sudden it's like the world opens up, and okay, now I can do this, and I can do that, and I mean, I'm afraid to know how many snippets I have, and I have a core set of 20 or 30 that probably get used more frequently than others, but it's awfully nice to be able to go into TextExpander, look up the snippet, and know that, for example, an Amazon account number or a credit card number or something, it's all right in there. All I have to do is just find the snippet. I don't have to go and dig out all that other information, a few keystrokes, and it's implemented wherever I need it to be implemented.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Also, it's really nice to know that you don't have to dive deep into the program to create new snippets. You can set it up so with a single hotkey, you can create a new snippet right on the fly. If you've typed something, you say, I'm going to be needing this 4 or 5 more times in this document. You create a snippet right then and there, and you're ready to go.
Yeah, great point. That points to just how easy it is to create these snippets. You could create one just for a document, just for one day's work or one project, then delete it, and you won't feel like you had to waste a whole lot of time creating that snippet.
Really, it's a matter of seconds. It truly is a matter of seconds. You can also create a snippet based on what's on your clipboard. It's just that easy.
Yeah, that was a feature that I have to admit I wasn't completely aware of, that I could take something from my clipboard and automatically incorporate it into a snippet.
There's 2 ways. One way is to create a new snippet based upon whatever is on the clipboard. And that's useful, but then you have a snippet lying around. But there's another way of creating a snippet that will find out whatever is currently on the clipboard and insert that. So you can have a snippet that contains some text with a little mark in it saying insert clipboard contents here. And when that snippet expands, it includes the text that's in the snippet plus what's on the clipboard.
There's so many facets to TextExpander. That's why you need Take Control of TextExpander. You need to have Michael's wisdom. Michael, how much will your wisdom cost us?
My wisdom currently goes for the rate of $10 for the ebook or for the PDF, depending on the form you want to buy it in. If you buy one, you get the other for free.
Great. And the obvious place to go to get Michael's wisdom, is takecontrolbooks.com.
That's correct.
I'll have links in the show notes to the website, obviously straight to Michael's book, to find him on Twitter, to find me on Twitter, to find everything we talked about. Michael, congratulations. It's a great book. It's a great program. I'm so glad you covered it. I know that I've learned a few things after perusing it already. I'm looking forward to learning a whole lot more and making even better use of one of my favorite programs.
Well, this book was one of the most fun books I've ever worked on, so it's a pleasure to have it out and available to anyone. And I can even get you a copy free if you really want it.
Yeah, we don't tell them that. Yeah. But you know, that's a really interesting comment, and folks, you aren't going to appreciate this, but it's amazing how many times I talk to authors or anyone who's done a project, and after the mic or the camera go off, they say, "Oh, I'm so glad I don't have to look at this program for a few months. I'm just so sick of it." That's not what's going to happen with TextExpander, and Michael's telling you that.
No. You're going to have to pry it off my cold, dead hands.
Michael, it's been a while since we talked to you. Give us a brief update on what else you're doing, because I know you don't just sit there and do snippets all day.
No. Well, let's see. Last April and May was my month of writing heavily. In addition to the TextExpander book, I also did a second edition of a book I did about the iPad that was published by Peach Pit, the iPad 2 project book. I've also been working closely with Take Control because they brought in the EPUB portion of their production in-house, so that now when they produce a PDF, they can also produce the iBookstore EPUB version at the same time, and I've been helping them with that, converting manuscripts and helping them work out the production process and adapting the style so the books will look good in ebook format. And writing the occasional tidbits article, working with some other publishers on other projects can't talk about yet, and just generally trying to have fun with my equipment.
Well, hopefully when those other projects are able to be talked about, you'll come back and talk to us here on MacVoices TV. We'd love to hear about them.
I'd be glad to.
Great. It's been a pleasure. Thanks so much for your time.
Well, thank you.
Folks, that's Michael E. Cohen. He is the author of Take Control of TextExpander from the Take Control ebook series. Again, check our show notes. You'll find links to everything you need to know. Until the next time, I'm Chuck Joyner. MacVoices TV is the talk of the Mac community. Thanks for watching. MacVoices TV is part of the MacVoices group and a member of Mac Level 10.